During his latest unhinged press conference, Donald Trump appeared to publicly validate widespread reports that Republican senators who don't support his administration's nominees will suffer and have been threatened with political consequences, including potentially primary challenges. And around the same time, an outspoken Republican senator has been publicly complaining about the pressure campaign, potentially leading to a consequential standoff in the Republican-led Senate next year. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, this is both a follow-up video to an unhinged press conference of Donald Trump's that we've been discussing all day, as well as multiple videos that have been discussing the potential political consequences for Republicans, elected Republicans, who do not cultishly devote themselves to all of Donald Trump's wildly unqualified, and in some cases disqualified, cabinet and administration nominees. So I want to play you what Donald Trump happened to say when he was bluntly asked about this at a press conference earlier today.
Mr. President.
Should senators who oppose your nominees, your cabinet nominees, should they be primary?
If they are unreasonable, I'll give you a different answer, an answer that you'll be shocked to hear. If they're unreasonable, if they're opposing somebody for political reasons or stupid reasons, I would say has nothing to do with me. I would say they probably would be primaried. But if they're reasonable, fair, and really disagree with something or somebody, I could see that happening. But I do believe that if they're I think we have great people. I think we have a great group of people. Pam has been unbelievably received. You take a look, Pam Bondi. So many have been just unbelievably received. I think Pete Hegseth is making tremendous strides over the last week. He's going to be great. Look, he went to Princeton, he went to Harvard, he was a great student there, but he really was, from the first day I met him, all he wanted to talk about was military. He's just a military guy. I think it's a natural. This was my idea.
So here's the thing. So much to unpack there. Before we get to the public on-camera response from a sitting Republican senator, again, this is pretty big stuff, but I just want to say for context here, Trump, per usual, is trying to have some degree of plausible deniability. Well, I'm not saying it's me, but yeah, if they oppose my nominees for stupid reasons, for political reasons, then yeah, I think they'll be primaried. Well, Donald Trump is not a reasonable person. Remember, he's a malignant narcissist. He is vain beyond comparison. So what is it exactly that he considers a good reason to oppose one of his nominees, whom he presumably thinks there would not be a good reason to oppose? See how he's setting up these elected Republicans in a catch-22? Well, I didn't say they couldn't oppose them. I just said it couldn't be for a stupid reason. But you just talked about, like, Pete Hegseth, of all people, again, wildly unqualified, as we've discussed in previous videos, who's been credibly accused of sexual misconduct, as we've discussed in previous videos. You don't think there's a good reason, a good principled reason for a Republican to oppose Pete Hegseth? If that's the bar you're creating, if that's the standard you're establishing, then it sounds like there is no good faith reason in your estimation to oppose any of your nominees. And if that's the case, it sure sounds like you're promising political retribution if you face any challenge at all from your party. And I should say, in a 53-47 Senate, they can only afford to lose 4 senators. Now, before I play this next clip of a sitting Republican senator, Lisa Murkowski, I should say that as a general proposition, even though I don't make predictions, if I had gun to my head, if I was forced to bet money, I would, as a general proposition, bet that Republicans bend the knee to Trump. More often than not, that is precisely what they do. But is there the possibility that 4 senators, including perhaps Mitch McConnell, lame duck Mitch McConnell, who likely won't seek re-election, who is not part of Republican leadership, that he would oppose some of Trump's nominees? It's possible, but you need 4, and you need them to stand in unison. On that note, same time we're hearing reports of Trump and his allies threatening Republican senators with political consequences, and then again publicly validating those threats, you have Lisa Murkowski, and she seems to be pretty fed up with Trump's machinations behind the scenes to transform the GOP into a cult. This is what she had to say on camera.
The approach is going to be everybody toe the line. Everybody line up. We got you here, and if you want to survive, you better be good. Don't get on Santa's naughty list here because we will primary you.
That is the reported strategy. That is what we're hearing. That's what we discussed in previous videos. And Murkowski, who is a moderate by GOP standards, she is a senator from Alaska. She, as far as Republican senators go, she is perhaps, with the possible exception of Mitt Romney, perhaps the sanest among them. She doesn't seem happy about it. Now, Mediaite has discussed this. This report comes on the heels of another Politico report about how Senator Joni Ernst, Republican of Iowa, changed her tune on Defense Secretary designate Pete Hegseth after being leaned on by MAGA World. Senators Bill Cassidy and Mike Rounds are next up for the Ernst treatment, per Politico. But while the arm twisting might get Trump's nominees confirmed, it could also inspire a backlash. Quote, it might work in this situation for Hegseth, but long term, it's not in the president's interest, one anonymous Republican told Politico. Lisa Murkowski, meanwhile, signed her name to the criticism, calling the pressure campaign, quote, a little more intense than usual, particularly Republican on Republican, which I don't think is particularly appreciated. That was Lisa Murkowski, the same person we saw in the previous clip. She even went so far as to warn Trump could still lose Ernst, even though her pledge to support Hegseth through his confirmation process. Oh, anybody that thinks she's weak has another thing coming. Now, I don't have as much faith in Joni Ernst as Lisa Murkowski does, because Ernst is much more of a MAGA Republican, in my opinion, than a moderate, but she's also a veteran. She's also a woman who has, made issues of and has made a political point to try to crack down on sexual assault in the military. She takes these issues very seriously. And here you have Pete Hegseth, who has been credibly accused of sexual misconduct, not to mention the fact that he is not qualified by conventional standards to be the defense secretary. He has never held a meaningful command position in the military. He is a decorated veteran, yes, but so are many others who would not be good fits to actually lead, an organization comprised of 3 million people with an annual budget of $900 billion. We actually have plenty of evidence that Pete Hegseth would be a disastrous leader in that respect, to say nothing of his lack of credentials. She's also somebody who reportedly wanted the defense secretary position. She has other interests involved that, in theory, principled interests that could cause her to oppose Hegseth. However, when it comes to Donald Trump, she, like most other Republican elected officials, are cowards. She is not as principled or as stalwart as a Lisa Murkowski or even a Susan Collins, right? She's not in that moderate group. So is it possible that Joni Ernst could be pushed to dig her heels in and oppose Pete Hegseth's confirmation? I suppose. Again, I'm not predicting this. I would just be surprised if that were the case, given her past performance when it comes to Trump capitulating the way that most elected Republicans do. But in theory, if you could get Susan Collins, a Maine, she's representing Maine as a Republican, but Maine is a blue state. He has to win re-election. He can't be seen as too far in the MAGA field. So if you get Collins, Murkowski, Ernst, and McConnell, you can say, well, McConnell, but yeah, McConnell's not a MAGA Republican. In many ways, he's a coward too. He's a victim of Donald Trump. When I think of Mitch McConnell, in some ways, I think of Victor Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein, the protagonist of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And this is a guy who, through his hubris, through his arrogance, through his indifference, became a victim of Frankenstein's monster, right? He ultimately died. His life was ruined, and he ultimately died in part due to the monster. Politically, that's Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is smarter than Donald Trump, for all his nefariousness, has more principles than Donald Trump, and actually has an ideology that doesn't derive from narcissism. Now, will McConnell bend the vast majority of his principles or break them outright for the sake of power? Yes. But Mitch McConnell is more hesitant to break principle and break tradition, as inclined as he is to do that. He's much more reserved and much more strategic about it than Donald Trump. Donald Trump will drop principle the moment it's mildly inconvenient, and maybe even for fun. Mitch McConnell doesn't do that, right? He has to have a pure lizard calculus about, oh my God, this is absolutely worth it for me. Now, I would argue Mitch McConnell's also contributed to the long-term decay of the Senate. But again, neither here nor there. Compared to Trump, he is more principled, more ideological, and he actually has a vision for his party besides just his personal aggrandizement, which is one of the reasons why McConnell stepped down from leadership like Nancy Pelosi. Not as an act of altruism per se. I think he saw the writing on the wall. You know, in many cases, McConnell sees an open rebellion. You have elected Republican senators like Josh Hawley and Rick Scott from Florida defying McConnell publicly, breaking rank with McConnell publicly in a way that you didn't see in the pre-Trump world because McConnell ran a tight ship. They bitched at each other in private, but publicly they were a unified front. Well, Trump changed all that. You have Ted Cruz, Rick Scott, Josh Hawley, and others publicly criticizing McConnell. So McConnell was like, oh, damn, the future of the party is MAGA, and I've been seen as insufficiently loyal to MAGA. So that's why McConnell's going to serve out the remainder of his term, but from like a backbench perspective, much like Nancy Pelosi in the House. But McConnell might say, you know what? I hate Donald Trump. I've tried to help Donald Trump to the best of my ability. We've made this unholy alliance with one another where even though we despise each other, we more or less have each other's backs, particularly McConnell with Trump. Not so much with Trump and McConnell, whatever. But McConnell might think, you know what? What have I to lose? I'm a multimillionaire. I've gotten all my conservative judges. I'm not running for re-election. I'm not part of Republican leadership. I can be a pain in the ass now. So maybe McConnell might be the fourth one to break rank with Pete Hegseth and RFK Jr. I'm not saying this is likely. I would still bet, again, if you made me bet, I would just bet on Republicans as a general proposition to bend the knee. But maybe 4 of them won't. Maybe 4 of them will find the courage to give Trump the finger. But the last thing I'll say is we actually have reporting that Elon Musk has entered the fray. We've talked about this before, but GOP faces test with Elon Musk's threat to fund primary challengers for Trump detractors. We have a conjunction of massive wealth and massive political power with the absence of accountability. Will anybody stand up and say stop? As Trump prepares to return to the White House, his favorite billionaire buddy, Elon Musk, is sending a warning to Republicans. Support Trump's cabinet picks or else. Trump is now threatening to financially back a primary challenge to any Republican senator who opposes Trump's nominees. We already know Musk thinks of himself as the master of the universe. This week, he solidifies his title as the world's richest man by becoming the first person to reach $400 billion in net worth, according to a new estimate from Bloomberg News. This week, Tesla closed shares at a record high, soaring 69% since Trump's election victory. Musk is using that wealth and his close relationship with Trump to wield the power of the presidency and intimidate and bully members of the U.S. Senate. At some point, Republican senators will have to ask themselves, either in public or private, do they want to be reduced to potted plants in this particular system? This is the moment we're at right now. We have this conjunction of massive wealth and massive political power with the absence of accountability. There are words in our language that describe what we're confronting here. Words like oligarchy, kleptocracy, and kakistocracy. Haven't heard that one. Ethics used to be something people cared about, but not anymore. 8 years ago, people were concerned about whether or not Trump would divest himself from his companies once he's elected president. Now he's not even going through the motions. Just weeks before he's set to return the White House, he's out there marketing a new perfume project. I mean, see, this is what I'm saying. This is such a good point by Charlie Sykes. How many of us who obsessively follow politics, just because Trump has overwhelmed our brains with all the ethical violations, have forgotten about that presidents and elected officials are supposed to divest themselves from their businesses so as to show the American people, hey, I'm not going to use the powers of government to financially enrich myself beyond my government-mandated salary. In any other context, in any other world, this alone would have been a career killer. But now it's so rote, so banal in the age of Trump, we don't even think about it. This is what I mean. This is where I get frustrated with the asymmetry. Again, it's not even, listen, Trump won fair and square. Trump won the election. I don't deny that. And I hate that. But I can deal with that. What is so frustrating is the double standard, how we grade Trump on a curve. Imagine if Biden had private businesses or a business or some sort of private revenue generating thing. Peanut farm, like Jimmy Carter, President Carter. And he refused to divest himself. He refused to separate and put like all of this in a blind trust. He still had direct financial involvement and benefit from these things while president. That'd be the end of Joe Biden. But because it's Trump, we don't care. We don't care. I mean, we care. That's because we're reasonable. You are subscribed to Pondering Politics. I know you're subscribed. I know, because even if you weren't subscribed at the beginning of this video, you've already subscribed and you've liked and you're recommending it to others. But like a lot of other people, even like the mainstream media and centrists, they just don't care about this. They don't give a shit, even though they absolutely would. They would see it as the height of corruption if it were anybody else. But because it's Trump, At some point, Republican senators will have to ask themselves, either in public or private, do they want to be reduced to potted plants in this particular system? Will anybody stand up and say, stop? This is what the Constitution is designed to do, provide checks and balances that would prevent exactly this sort of thing from happening. This is the big question going into Trump's second administration. It's a test, not just for Republicans in Washington, but for the country. We're still a long way from any confirmation hearings for Trump's nominees, but these hearings are going to be extraordinary. No matter what Republican senators think right now, when the country sees some of the testimony that they're going to see some of this testimony, when they see some of the people who will come forward and tell stories about Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, or Kash Patel's alleged behavior, it will be a gut check that Republicans have failed over and over again. Then the follow-up question is, will there be meaningful political consequences to this? I don't know. I don't have faith in that. I do not have faith. And I'm not entirely sure faith is justified in this case. It's a choice. But it seems like the American people have been trained to grade the GOP and Republicans and Elon Musk, Trump himself, on a curve. And it seems like those people who are graded on the curve, Trump and Musk and elected Republicans and MAGA, are inclined to exploit that advantage, and that they're not checking themselves or each other. They know that they have the power, and they're not particularly inclined to even rein themselves in or each other. We have created a system which does not properly deter bad behavior from Republicans in particular. That's not a tenable scenario, especially given that they are likely to wield power in one form or another, given all the other manifold institutional advantages they have. That's why the founding fathers, listen, for all their faults, there are many, even in terms of divining this government system and devising it, that's why as a general principle, they didn't trust the elected officials or the politicians to check themselves. That's why each branch is supposed to check each other. It's not like, hey, listen, you got all the power, just behave yourself, try to do well. No, it's like, no, we don't trust the president to check himself, which is why we have Congress check the president and the Supreme Court check the president. We don't trust Congress to always get things right, which is why we give checks and balances to the president and the Supreme Court to check Congress. And we're supposed to have them with the Supreme Court. That's my whole pet issue, is I don't think that Congress and the president have a meaningful check against the Supreme Court. But at least in theory, that's the whole point. The whole point is, yes, you are in a better world. You would check yourself, but damn it, if you're not going to do it, there are other checks against you that will be imposed upon you when you don't do it yourself. And we have created a system which effectively disarms that by rewarding Republicans for their corruption and their graft and their malfeasance, and not expecting them to do the same damn thing that we expect from Democrats. The very people who sweep all this shit about Trump under the rug would be apoplectic if it were Joe Biden, if it were Hunter Biden. Doesn't even hold public office. That's why I say, folks, one of the major enterprises, one of the major policies, or rather major goals that we have to have, you and I and everybody else that are not MAGA Republicans, is to demand one standard, one, for everybody, and demand that Republicans adhere to that standard. They don't want that because they don't think they can win without a double standard. And that also should scare the hell out of you. Food for thought. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.